Skinner's Brewery, Betty Stogs.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. The sun is over the yard arm and it's time for a beer. And I've got a bottle of this stuff. This is the Betty Stogs Bitter from the Skinner's Brewery. Now, as you know, I was in Cornwall recently and I've yet to try a good Cornish beer. So far what I've tried has been distinctly average, and I'm at the stage now where I'm thinking maybe the style of Cornish beer is just bland and boring. However, this potentially could prove me wrong. Even if it doesn't, I'm going to add this at the beginning. All right. I was reading up on the history of this brewery, and they've only been going since 1997, and they're based in Truro in Cornwall, and they were founded by a couple who originally from Jersey who moved to Cornwall, and they wanted to try and break into the Cornish beer market, and they initially started with this stuff, the Betty Stogs, and it became more and more popular, and they went from strength to strength. They were genuinely, especially in Truro, I wouldn't say a big brewer, but they were a well-known brewer in that area. And then COVID came in 2020. And this lot really suffered, so much so they almost went bust. This is the kind of story that I like, regardless of the beer. Despite what I say about English brewers, small English brewers, I never like to see a brewery going bust. Even the macro brewers, and the reason I say that for the macro brewers is because that's people's jobs. And certainly in this day and age, and especially in the UK, when times are tough and they're going to get tougher, the last thing you need to happen to yourself is to lose your job. So I always want to sort of make that clear, and I always want you to bear in mind that I would never ever wish, even Marston's, I would never ever wish them to go bust, because that goes beyond beer reviewing. That's as I say, that's beer history that's disappearing, whether good or bad. It's beer history and it's people's livelihoods. And when you're at a certain age, and if you lose your job, that's a real hard thing to swallow. And it's even worse if you're living in an area where there aren't many jobs, and you've been doing that all your life. It's really tough. So when I read about these stories about breweries and brewers going bust or going through a real hard time, I really do feel for them, despite what they're brewing. I just think that's tragic. But this story does have a happy ending, and as I say, the pandemic hit them really hard, so much so that they had to, they at great personal expense to themselves as well, but they initially went to down the route of crowdfunding, and they needed £100,000 to stay afloat. That was just to stay afloat, not to expand or invest in anything. That was just running costs, and they smashed it in 4 days, which I think is a brilliant story, and it restores my faith in people's loyalty to breweries. When in an age where you think, in the UK as well especially, we just don't have the pride in our breweries. Maybe sort of locally you do, but generally, certainly not on the scale that you do have the loyalty in Germany. I mean, it's part of the culture over there, but over here it's sort of looked down on. And I think that's disgusting, even the craft brewers as well. And as I say, even craft brewers going bust, I take absolutely no pleasure in that. Even though I don't particularly like what they brew, I take no pleasure in seeing that happen. Because at the end of the day, it's somebody's dream that's just gone up in smoke. And it is just tragic. But as I say, this lot done really well. And they smashed that target in I think it was 4 days. They raised £100,000, which I think is brilliant. And they used what was left over, because there was money still coming in. They used that to invest in the company, and they're an ongoing concern there, which I think is brilliant. I did look up the company's accounts, and I think some of the directors are no longer directors, so I'm not sure whether they've been taken over. I'm not sure what's happened, but all I know is that the brewery is still running. So regardless of the outcome of this, whether this is a good beer or whether it's a bad beer, this is a happy ending, which I think is brilliant, certainly when it comes to brewers. But it's testament to them that their beer is that good that people want to put their hand in their pocket and help keep them afloat. So maybe this could be the first Cornish beer that I like. Now, I do recall having this quite a while back, years ago in fact, and I do distinctly remember thinking it wasn't that great. I'm hoping my palate has adjusted and my senses are a little better now, so I can give you an honest opinion on this. As I say, from what I've tasted from Cornish beer, you know, the St Austell stuff, the Sharps Brewery stuff, which is owned by Malt and Coors, they're the two big brewers in Cornwall. It ain't that great. So please, Skinner's Brewery, please be the one that changes my mind on Cornish beer. So without further ado, let's get this investigated. Now, doing the research for this, there are a few things that immediately make me like this brewery. They give you a full brew sheet. They give you the IBUs. And that's not something that every brewer will do. So Skinners, if you're watching, keep on doing that. Keep leading by example, because that's what people like me, and I'd imagine other people as well, want to see. We don't want marketing flim-flam. We want to see what's going into the beer. Right, what does it say? Fruity and malty, amber-coloured Cornish ale. Yeah, but on the front it's got brazen Cornish bitter. That's what I like. Bitter appears to be a dirty word at the moment among brewers, and they don't use it. Very few do when they are describing their bitters. Skinners are loud and proud with that, which I like. That's another point for you, I think. That's another feather in your cap for doing that. Brewer's notes with whole flower, Celia, Northdown and Aurora hops. I'll explain what they are, what their characteristics are in a bit. Alongside malted barley and wheat, this is a Cornish twist on a classic smooth drinking bitter. Okay, the light malty aroma leads to a floral cedar taste and a sharp tang of bitter grapefruit. Bitter grapefruit is not what I want to taste in a bitter, unfortunately. I want to taste spicy bitterness. But there you go. And I'll get onto the hops, because the hops will have a big thing on this as well. And they're saying that they're using whole flower hops as well, which is another good sign. And it leaves a long-lasting impression, just like Betty herself. Our beer name, the full-bodied, golden-haired, hearted character of Betty Stogs, marched straight out of Cornwall folklore into the throne as a queen of Cornish amber ales. I'll get onto what Betty Stogs was in a sec. There you go, it's 500ml bottle, 4%. The IBUs on this are 37. That's quite bitter for a bitter, believe me. So that's on your sort of West Coast IPA style bitterness, which is making me wonder, are them hops really going to be too bitter for this bitter? That's about it. Right, quickly I'll talk about Betty Stogs, and then I'll talk about the hops that are in this. No, sorry, I'll do the hops first. Okay, so there's 3 hops in here that they mention. There's the Celia hops, there's the Aurora hops, and there's the Northdown hops. Okay, Celia hops, what's the characteristic of that? Celia hops are very similar to Styrian Goldings. So the characteristics of Styrian Goldings are they're zesty, bitter type hops. Styrian Goldings, of course, do originate in Slovenia, around that area, and I think they do grow them over here. And the difference over here, I really couldn't tell you what they are. I've seen them in a jar, I've smelt them, and yeah, they smell quite nice. That's the Celia hops. The Northdown hops are renowned for their spiciness, their pine, the resinous pine, and that cedar woody type flavour that you sometimes get from dark ales, English dark ales. The Aurora hops are quite interesting. They have all the usual characteristics of a citrus and zesty type flavour, floral notes, some herbal notes as well. But they also contain a small amount of aniseed, or I don't mean literal aniseed, I mean the flavour. They contain a little bit of aniseed flavour, and they contain a little bit of tea flavour, believe it or not. And for me, anything that's flavoured like tea or is tea is all right by me, because tea is my favourite drink, apart from beer, of course. But there you go. Betty Stogs. Yeah, Betty Stogs was a character in Cornish folklore, as it says on the side of the bottle. She was genuinely renowned as being very lazy. She couldn't cook, couldn't sew, couldn't knit, and she had a daughter who she neglected. She was into her beer, so that's where the name comes from. And apparently she had a kid who was neglected as well. It was always dirty, but it was taken away by the pixies and cleaned. That's what the folklore says. I mean, they do believe in that down there. They sell these. I think they call them piskies down in Cornwall. They're little people. And fairies, believe it or not, I know that kids' sort of programs have turned them into like a very nice mythical creature. What's the one in Peter Pan? What was her name? Was it Wendy? Was she a fairy? I don't know. But it makes them look like they're very friendly. If you look at Irish folklore, fairies are very, very evil, believe it or not. And there has been planning permission refused where there have been these mounds, and they call them fairy mounds, and they won't build on top of them. I don't know whether that's still the case, but it certainly was a few years ago. And some people do believe in fairies down the bottom of the garden, believe it or not. And I know for a fact, because my old man did. Yeah, that's the Irish for you. There you go. I will say no more. Let's get this open and let's see how good it is. Right, now I'm really hoping this is going to be a good one. I really am, but I'm not going to lie to you. If it's poor, I'll tell you it's poor. But please, if you do see a bottle of this, just buy some, just to support the brewery. You know, they've been going through a bit of a hard time, and yeah, if for nothing else, just offer it up, drink it, taste it, see what you think. At least you'll be helping the brewery out. But there you go, let's get it open. Now, again, with all these Cornish beers, oh you bastard, there you go. What the fuck? That is lively, very fucking lively indeed, and it's gone all over me. Well, I have to say the aromas are big, because I can smell that from here. And even poor little Bob, he's got covered in beer. Oh, Bob, you got covered in beer, mate. Don't drink that, for fuck's sake. I had Percy eating Slim Fast yesterday, and that was not fucking pretty. And that beer has just gone all over my laptop. Oh, Jesus. Right, that's why I carry some of this stuff around. Because some beers are fucking lively. Now, normally I wouldn't expect that from an English beer. A Belgian beer, yes. And that is my experience of Belgian beers. Sometimes you open them up with all the carbonation and where they're bottle conditioned, they are effing lively. But yeah, sadly this one has and all. Oh, bugger. Right, what we got on the nose? I must say the aromas on this are big. Yeah, huge. Which is a good sign. There is distinct grapefruit there as well. But there's also some nice herbal notes. Herbal, flowery notes. Very hoppy, I will say that, but not an American hop type flavour. And in a blindfold test, wow, this is very lively indeed. Wow. In a blindfold test, if they asked me to sniff that, I would say that was an English IPA. It's got that nice zesty orange zest, what I perceive to be orange zest in there, almost like the Fuller's Bengal Lancer. But there's a big seam of grapefruit in that as well, in that aroma. Okay, right, well, I could probably, well, if the aromas are anything to go by, I'm going to predict that this is going to have some flavour to it, which would be a first for Cornish beer. I don't like the bash Cornish beer because I love the place and I love the people, but Christ almighty. There it is in the glass. It's slightly cloudy from what I can gather, or is that just where this room is so warm? And that is a little bit chilled. But it looks good. I don't think it's bottle conditioned. It doesn't say anything on there. It's only 4% as well. So it's a good session ABV. Hopefully the flavour's going to be there. Good health. Oh, that is nice. Wow. Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. It has got some citrus on it, I will say that. And the citrus is grapefruit and orange zest. But pleasant. Very light malt character. And it's weird because they've called it a bitter. Now, if they'd have called this an English IPA, I would have said they fucking nailed it, because that is not a great English IPA, but definitely in keeping with the style. Certainly doesn't compare to the Fuller's Bengal Lancer, but or even the Shepherd Neame IPA. But this, it's got a really nice mouthfeel, considering all the carbonation that was in this. That was really lively, but it doesn't translate to the mouthfeel at all, and it tastes very, very smooth and full-bodied. There it is in the glass. Can you see? There's quite a lot of carbonation in there. Ignore that. That doesn't translate to the mouthfeel at all. It's very, very smooth and pleasant as well. They've got the balance spot on there. Too much grapefruit, and it just doesn't taste nice. It reminds me of them some of the nastier West Coast IPAs and some of the New England IPAs, but this is actually quite nice. I will say the characterisation of this as a bitter, it's not what I would class as an English bitter. More in keeping with an IPA, a traditional English IPA in my opinion, but still nice. Nice, easy drinking. It's warm outside. This is slightly colder than cellar temperature, but I think that is the perfect temperature to drink this, because it is very refreshing, and I do like that. It's got the right balance of flavour and drinkability, and as I say, all my reviews are honest. If it's dog shit, I will tell you. If it's good, I will tell you. But this one is not a bad one at all, and it's restored my faith in Cornish beer slightly, because that at least has some character and some flavour to it. And that would have been a tragedy if they'd have gone out of business, because I don't believe a brewer like this deserves to go out of business, because that is a nice beer. I think they should up the ABV slightly, keep the recipe the same, but just up the ABV, call this an English IPA, and you're onto a winner. I know they're not going to take any notice of me, but this, in my view, is not a bitter. I wouldn't class that as an English bitter at all. It doesn't really have the characteristics of it. I know they say they've put a Cornish twist on a bitter, but no, I think you've completely missed the point there. But English IPA, you have, I think, a winner on your hands there with that, if you did that. And I, for one, would not complain if you called it an IPA. God, that is really easy drinking as well. This is one of the happiest reviews I've done in a while. Not only is there a good outcome or a good ending for the brewery, i.e. them not going bust, they've actually produced something here that I really like. That is not bad at all. And that's really nice. I'd love to try it on cask. Now, I was reading that they have their own pub. I think it's called the Old Ale House, and it's in Truro. And their words are that it's more than just a pub, and I thought, oh, here we go, more bollocks, right? But reading about it, they love live music. They have live music there regularly, but they also do a jam night. Now, what's a jam night? If you're not into music, you probably don't know what that is. Well, that's basically where you come along with your guitar, with your bass, with your drums even, or if you can sing and you just get up on the stage with a few musicians and you belt out a few songs. Now, you may think, oh, well, what's the big deal about that? Some people who are musicians will never get the chance to play on a stage in front of a few people. They just don't get that. Jam nights will allow you to do that. Not only that, if you're starting out, jam nights are invaluable, because if you don't have musician mates, you may not get a chance to jam or play with other musicians. And if you don't get that, you do suffer, in my opinion, as a musician, I think. Being a musician, in my view, is about playing and interacting with other musicians as well. And if you don't, especially in Cornwall as well, I mean, I don't know, I might be speaking out of turn here, but if you're living in one of the rural areas and you know there's a jam night on, that you can go down and there'll be other musicians there. It's not just the interaction, it's not just the experience that you get, it's the contacts that you make. If you meet a decent drummer down there, you may form a band or whatever. Some great bands have been formed from jam nights locally, and yeah, I think that's great. And I think that's great that pubs are doing that with bands, because live music is dying out in this country, and it is a fucking crying shame. As I say, I've got these two books here. I've referred to them on some of the other videos as well, but this is London's Lost Music Venues, and it's filled 2 books, right? This is just London alone. Each venue has a double page, so that's how many venues have gone in London, and that is fucking tragic, in my opinion. And it's why I truly believe that London is not a leading centre of music in Europe anymore. It used to be, and this is no fucking exaggeration, it used to be the centre of the world for live music, I think, and during the 60s and 70s that was certainly the case, and in the 80s and 90s it's just declined, and we are where we are now with fucking 2 books filled up with all the venues that are shut down. But for them to do that, again, that's brilliant. I really am warming to this Skinner's Brewery. I really do like what they do, and I like what they do for the community. And this beer has won me over and changed my mind very slightly on Cornish beer. That really is a pleasant beer. I do like that. Hand on my heart, that is a good beer. So, what is the verdict on Betty Stogs Brazen Cornish Bitter? Well, if you're a traditionalist like me and you're expecting a bitter, you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be bitterly disappointed. But you're not going to be bitterly disappointed. You'll only be slightly disappointed, because if you're a fan of English IPA, you're going to be in for a treat. And this could be classed as a session IPA. And they haven't done that. They've called it a bitter, which is fine if that's what they want to do. But the bottom line is, this is a good beer. I really like it. It may not be to everybody's taste who likes traditional English beers. The malt character on this is not big. I will say that. This is all about the hops, and the 3 hops that I've mentioned, you do get a bit of each of the characteristics from that. But notably, the big two big flavours in this is the orange zest and the grapefruit. Now that sounds a bit New World, that sounds a bit craft beer, IPA. It's not. And it's subtle grapefruit, and it's subtle zesty orange, and a bit of lemon as well. And it mixes well. I mean, when I say there's no malt character on there is a slight malt character on there, and it does mix well with all of them. The mouthfeel is superb. Just be fucking careful when you're opening it. And another tip, drink this slightly cooler than cellar temperature, because it really is a refreshing beer. Certainly in this weather, it's very smooth, I will say that. Oh, it's really tasty. I really do like that, and the more I drink, the more I like it. That is a good one. And I do remember trying it before and thinking it wasn't good, and I can't think why. Maybe it's the grapefruit. I wasn't used to the grapefruit. But try it if you can get it. Again, this is the caveat I put in all these Cornish beer reviews. Those of you who live a little bit further than Watford may not be able to get hold of this. I've managed to get it down here in Kent, so I'd imagine it's available in Surrey and everywhere down there towards the West Country, above sort of Watford. I've seen it in London. I've seen this in a couple of shops in London. Certainly supermarkets I've seen it in. You may struggle to get it, but if ever you're down this way and you see some of this, have a go on this. It is not bad at all. And for that reason, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I was toying with the idea of giving it a 7 out of 10 when I first tried it. But the more I drink, the more moorish it's got, and I really like it. So for me, that is a solid 8 out of 10. Very nice indeed. Restored my faith in Cornish beer, and if you see some, get some. And remember, beer is working class champagne.